have with me my buddy Andy McCarthy, patriot, former federal prosecutor. Andy McCarthy, who is Huma Abedin-Wiener?
She is the Deputy Chief of Staff to Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and also one of Mrs. Clinton's top advisors at the State Department. She also is somebody who has family ties to people who are intimately related to the Muslim Brotherhood.
Now, is it McCarthyism, not Andy McCarthyism, you know what I mean, Joe McCarthyism, is it McCarthyism, as the libs like to call it, to try and determine, not just in her case, but whether there are efforts in various departments of our government where the Muslim Brotherhood may have a presence? I don't know. I mean, I'm sure with you, too. When I took various positions in the Reagan administration, I had FBI agents going all over the country interviewing my parents, my brothers, the lady who rented me her apartment, school teachers, everything. I mean, isn't this normal to find these things out?
Yeah, it's absolutely normal in any position that requires access to national defense information, classified information of any kind. You know, if I had run screaming from a room, the many times that I had to get my classified information access status re-upped, as they say. If I had run out of the room saying, "How could you question my patriotism?" I think they probably would have thrown a net over me and brought me to Willowbrook or something. But
right.
It's absolutely completely ordinary in the federal government to have your background checked in order to determine your worthiness for access to the nation's secrets. And not only that, Mark, it's got nothing to do with saying that somebody is a bad person or a dishonest person or anything like that. Just to bring it back to our old Justice Department experience, if I had suggested to my bosses at the U.S. Attorney's Office that I was equipped to handle a case, to investigate a case that involved friends or acquaintances of my family members, they would have looked at me like I had three heads. It was, pretty obvious that it would be, the appearance of impropriety would be so strong that the legitimacy of any government action would be called into question. So they wouldn't not let me handle the case because they didn't trust me. They wouldn't let me handle the case because we want the public to think that decisions made by government are made on the up and up, not because somebody's got an inside track.
Well, I guess I'm a little confused because we have McCain, who has flip-flopped on the Muslim Brotherhood when it comes to Egypt and maybe other countries. We have what appears to me evidence that members of the Muslim Brotherhood have been to the White House, don't we?
Yeah, there's no question that the administration has had a number of meetings with organizations which are unquestionably tied to the Muslim Brotherhood. When I say unquestionably, a lot of this was fleshed out in a 2007-2008 prosecution by the Justice Department called the Holy Land Foundation case. You were kind enough to mention a couple of times my book, The Grand Jihad, which we talked about. The title of that book actually comes from the key document in that case, which was an internal Muslim Brotherhood memorandum where the Muslim Brotherhood top officials in the United States said that their work in America was what they called a grand jihad to eliminate and destroy Western civilization from within by sabotage. That's what they say to themselves when they're talking among themselves.
Well, I guess what is really frustrating and, frankly, infuriating me is you have only five Republican House members who write to the five most important agencies and departments when it comes to national security, asking them if they're implementing what used to be routine when you and I were in the federal government, asking them about the Muslim Brotherhood, groups like CARE and so forth. And now we have a full-throated attack against Michelle Bachmann by the Speaker of the House, Boehner, by John McCain, by Lindsey Graham, by the liberal media, and now we have people for the Un-American Way demanding that she be forced off the House Intelligence Committee?
Yeah, it's an outrage, and what people need to understand is, first of all, what they're asking about Huma Abedin is not accusing her of crime or anything of that sort. It's asking the kind of normal questions that people responsible for national security would ask about people who have access to the nation's secrets. But this is much bigger than Huma Abedin. And I think the reason they're making such a big deal about her is they want to keep our eye off the real ball of what's going on here, which is that the State Department and the Obama administration, and I don't want to just single out the Obama administration, but they've been the worst offender, have taken a series of policy steps which have basically married our government up to the Muslim Brotherhood. Let me just say one that's particularly obnoxious. They've started something that's called the American Counterterrorism Forum, and they excluded Israel from it, even though Israel is the top target of terrorism in the world. Our co-chair on it is Turkey, which now funds Hamas and actually aids and abets these flotillas that try to block Israel's blockade of Hamas. And when Hillary Clinton gave her kickoff speech at this forum, she mentioned a series of terrorist attacks and a series of terrorist organizations, but no mention of Hamas and no mention of any attacks on Israel. And that's precisely because they are adopting the Muslim Brotherhood's view, which is that attacks on Israel are not terrorism, they're resistance. So what you're having here is an adoption piece by piece of the Muslim Brotherhood worldview, which is basically being inculcated into our government with the State Department really, carrying the laboring oar on it.
Do you think Obama hasn't visited Israel, which is unprecedented, because of this is part and parcel of the same thing?
I don't think there's any question about it. He wants to have his credibility. Look, you have to pick sides here. I know that everybody thinks that we have to be an honest broker and stay above it, but you got evil on one side and an authentic democracy on the other side. There's no being an honest broker there. You have to pick one side or the other, and unfortunately, he's chosen the wrong side.
Are you concerned that the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, a Republican, a former FBI agent, is out publicly kind of trash-mouthing Michelle Bachmann, taking the bait rather than raising concerns about the influence of the Muslim Brotherhood and their visits to the Oval Office?
Yeah, I'm very concerned about it, but, look, in my experience with the FBI, which is long and a lot of it is something I look back on very proudly, and I love the FBI as an institution. But, on this issue, there's two kinds of folks in the FBI. There are people who are mainly the line agents who are very alarmed about the infiltration of the Brotherhood, its principles, and its tentacles in more and more of Western life, including Western government. And then there are folks in the FBI who think that the way to do counterterrorism is outreach to the people who mean us harm. And they actually think that what's patriotic is to reach out to people who tell you outright that what they want is the destruction of the United States and the implementation of Sharia, because they've convinced themselves that somehow if we can interact with them and show them what good guys we are, they'll influence the young people in their communities against being involved in what they call violent extremism. Now, why they'd be particularly worried about that with Muslims if, as they tell us, Islamic ideology doesn't have anything to do with terrorism is kind of beyond me. But I think, unfortunately, you do have these two different viewpoints in the FBI, and I'm a little concerned that Mr. Rogers may, represent the wrong one.
Keith Ellison proudly, talks about himself as the first Muslim in the House of Representatives. Perfectly fine. But he's a very radical man, isn't he, who has tried to rewrite his history.
Yeah, he's that nexus between, I think, I'd like to call it Islamic radicalism. I don't think it's all that radical, but I think the nexus between Islamic supremacism and the hard left, which has been something that's gone on ever since there has been...
Which you've also written about extensively.
Yeah, look, if you go back historically, when the leftists and the Islamic supremacists have a common enemy, they have frequently in history made fast friends. And, it's happened in Egypt, it's happened in Iran, and it happened in the United States after 9/11. And, when you look at Mr. Ellison, he can walk in both those camps pretty comfortably.
Now, but why, oddly, would we find McCain and Graham and Rogers taking